Welcome back to your hope-filled perspective. I'm always grateful when you join us to hear the latest tips and trips and testimonies that our guests come and provide you. Today, we're going to be talking about how to approach your health with a spirit of grace. This is a message that's applicable to all of us, so I'm so glad you've joined us. Let me start off with Colossians 3:12 that says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." That's what we're going to be talking about today. My guest today is my friend Amy Connell, who I recently met at a conference, and we just clicked because I really resonated with her message. She's a personal trainer on a mission to help women realize that their eating and the way that they move their body doesn't have to be perfect, and that the reason we take care of our body is that we can do what we're called by God to do. Amy is an NASM certified personal trainer and has been in the fitness industry almost 15 years. I love this. She's a recovering step counter. Me too. And an imperfect eater. Me too. Living in God's perfect grace. Me too. That's why we're friends. Amy encourages women to strive for balanced, sustainable health and appreciate their God-created bodies, no matter what they look like. She lives in Houston, Texas with her husband, two always hungry teen boys, another point I can resonate on, and her stray turned princess pit bull named Grace. Welcome to your hope-filled perspective, Amy.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to be here with you.
I just love how God connects people and how he connected us at that conference a while back. I was so excited once I met you and thought, no, she needs to come on. We've got to talk about this.
I felt the same about you. I know that conference was so fantastic, and God just put so many amazing people right in my life, not only for the show, but just for my own personal life as well. So I'm so glad he connected us.
Yeah, there are going to be friendships that we're going to be able to continue on. And I'm grateful for technology that lets us connect, even though we don't live in the same city.
Oh, so true. So true. Isn't this fun? It's so fun that we're able to do this.
I know. I know. It's a privilege, actually.
It really is. It really is.
Amy, so often our passion comes out of our own hurts and trials. Not for everyone, but most people I talk to, they didn't ask for their ministry. God birthed their ministry out of something they experienced. And I love your perspective about giving ourselves grace in our own health and fitness and well-being. Will you share a little bit with how you came to have that perspective?
Of course. I really cannot remember a time in my life that I wasn't concerned about how my body looked and unhappy with some aspect of it. I danced growing up. I did the whole cheerleading thing. My early 20s, I spent trying to get abs worthy enough of having a belly button ring. And I will not show you my abs, but they do not have a belly button ring on them.
Mine either. And they're not worthy of one either.
Yeah. That ship
After having
sailed
children.
long ago. Exactly. I wouldn't do that to anyone anyway. My early 30s were spent, quite honestly, just trying to look like a hot mom. I had 2 kids in 20 months, and having transitioned from working professionally to being a stay-at-home mom, I think that kind of turned into something that I spent a lot of time and focus on. My mid 30s, once my babies were older and a little more, they could get up on a Saturday morning and give themselves cereal or whatever, it really turned into this obsession of how much I could move my body. Like I said, I've been teaching fitness classes for 15 years, and I really started to pride myself on how many hours of class I would teach in either a day or a week, and then adding on my running time. And it just really turned into this test of a physicality. And through that process, especially once I kind of entered into my early to mid 30s, I joined a Bible study, and my family found a really fantastic church. And I really started growing closer in my relationship to God. And I heard him very clearly one time saying, Amy, you are paying more attention to the food that you're eating and the exercise that you're going to do than you are to me.
Wow.
So, and I said, okay, okay. And I wish I could say like, well, I released all of that. But as you know, it's really hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to change our habits. It's hard to change our mindset. It's
Especially
really hard to
when
change.
society is giving us messages that are in our
Exactly.
face.
Exactly, exactly. So being a fitness professional, I'm getting magazines that all have great intention. I'm getting communications and so much of it, I think I internalized probably the wrong way, but it was like, you have to do this, and these are the rules, and this is how you have to do it in order to have it perfect. And so it had really turned into, quite honestly, a worship for me. And being a Christ follower, I know that's where had me. So I began this process. This is a really long answer to your question, and I'm sorry, but at least it sets the stage for where we are. I began this process of just really trying to listen to him.
Mhm.
And a lot of that's because he had been talking to me for a long time, and I had been sticking my fingers in my ears, and I'd been saying, no, 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 because I had heard him say, I want you to write, I want you to blog. This was several many years ago, and oh, no, 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 the world does not need another health and fitness blogger, right? There are plenty of those, plenty that, I don't need to do that. And he really just kind of, I don't want to say broke my spirit, but he really took me to a place in which I was very unsettled. And
Mm,
I was in a season of life when I should have felt very content and very settled. I mean, my marriage was great. My kids were great. We were in a new house. I mean, just all of the things, right? And
yep,
here I was just feeling stirred. So I ended up um, just spending a lot of time with him. And I didn't go to him with praises and prayers and this and that and this and then, all worship. I just would take myself outside, and I sat outside, and I just pretended like Jesus was sitting next to me. And not unlike when I go outside with my husband, we may not talk, but our presence is there and
yeah,
we're enjoying that. And slowly he started to give me direction, or at least confirm what he had been asking me to do that I'd been ignoring. So that's really where my passion lies. And the more I get into this, the more I realize that women, it's never occurred to them that it doesn't have to be perfect, because no one is telling him that your exercising doesn't have to be perfect and your eating doesn't have to be perfect. And they're trying to uphold these standards that the world has set and not that God has given us.
yeah. And that idea of perfection, whether it's with our eating or our fitness, can lead to an all or nothing mindset. I'm going to do it, and if it's perfect, I'll keep doing it. But if I can't do it perfectly, well, then I'm just going to give up and not think about it at all. And that's not good either.
Absolutely. I see so often kind of that on and off personality, or red light, green light, or I'm just going to blow it all out this weekend and I'll start on Monday, or I'm going to have a whole lot of fun over the holidays and then I'm going to start on January 1st or whatever it is. And I don't really believe that. I mean, maybe I'm wrong and maybe it's just because of my personality, but I don't know that that's where God wants us either. I mean, he doesn't ask us to go to church on Sunday morning and then close our Bible and not go back until the next Sunday. I mean, he wants us constantly with him, and I think that we want to know that it doesn't have to always be perfect, 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 100%. I'm not great about praying as much as I would like to, but I'm still doing it
Right.
some.
Right. I think one of the enemy's traps is really trying to get us to think that if we're not perfect, we're not worthy. How do you see this in women's perspectives regarding their health and fitness?
I cannot agree more with that statement. In fact, I would like to expand on that. And I think that he's giving us, if we're not perfect, we're not worthy, and you can't do what it is that's stirring in your heart that you want to do.
Mhm.
I think that a lot of this is his work in preventing us to do what God is calling us to do, what he's asking us to do. And maybe that's a long term, I call those like macro callings, where okay, I want to do this and in 4 years I will achieve this, or maybe it's those micro callings. But I really think it's a diversion for not staying focused on what God is wanting us to do right now and then in the future.
Yeah, it's almost this mindset that when I get to be perfect, then I will do what God's asking me to do. And the reality is, we will never get there. Jesus was the only one who was perfect. So if we're waiting for that to happen, we are wasting a lot of time being an influence that God wants us to be right now in our imperfection. And I don't know about you, but I can't relate to perfect people. The people who put on that perfect mask, that facade, I can't relate to that because I'm not perfect and I'm broken. I'd rather you show me your brokenness so we can walk through it together.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And um, that's one thing I have really tried to do. So there's a whole lot of makeup free, sweaty faces on Instagram of me.
I love it.
But no, I agree. I agree because, that's God's not calling us to be perfect. And in fact, I think that is doing him a disservice, because then we're not able to accept his grace, and we're not able to lean into him um, receive his love and his mercy. If we think we have it all together, then we're never going to go to him for that.
Exactly. Exactly. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need him. The whole reason we need him is because we're so imperfect and flawed.
Amen.
I've heard you say that the mission of your ministry, Graced Health, is to help women find balanced ways to take care of and appreciate their God created bodies, no matter what this looked like. But as I was preparing for our conversation, I started thinking that, speaking as someone who has a prominent physical deformity from a childhood illness, my body no longer looks like the body God created because of that illness and the subsequent deformity. So I'm sure that's the case for other listeners as well, scars from accidents or whatnot. So I'm just curious, how do we extend grace to ourselves regarding our physical bodies and even our health when it's no longer like God created it? Because I think that's a tool of the enemy too.
Mm, that's a great question. That's a really great question. I'm glad you said that because, um, that's like the part of your story that's never occurred to me. So thank you for challenging me in that way. I think a lot of it, giving ourselves grace through that process is remembering that we are, it's the entire story that that God is writing in our life. And it, physical deformity, like you mentioned, or we get in accidents and things change. We get sick, and that might leave lasting impact.
I mean, they can even be stretch marks after a woman has a baby. And so she looks
Yes.
at herself in the mirror and goes, ew, that's ugly. So it doesn't even have to be a physical deformity, but there are parts of all of us that we can look at our body and go, I don't like that. But I think what I have struggled with over the years, just being transparent, taking the mask off, is that because of that deformity, I have one foot that is extremely deformed. And I remember as a child, this came on as a childhood illness. And as a child, I used to punish that foot. I would never let it lead. When I would start to walk, I would always take off with my perfect or my normal foot as a way of punishing that deformity. How sick is that? But I'm curious then, okay, so God knew that was going to happen. That
Mhm.
didn't take him by surprise. How do we extend grace in those situations where we go, but that's not how God created me. So does that make me less? Does that make me less worthy, less valuable? How
Mhm.
how would you respond to that?
You're really challenging me here today, Michelle. I love it. um, I I think I would say, that God has changed you throughout your life. Um, and like you said, sometimes they're bigger ones, sometimes they're smaller ones. I I think the other thing to do is to not focus on that, or not really be negative about those particular things. I have an acronym that I like to use when I talk about how to apply grace in your health, and I can go through that if you want. But the very last one is emphasize the positive. Like you were talking about, um, your foot, and kind of focusing on that, and then the stretch marks. And I mean, look, I'm 45. Like, we've all got the things, right? The story that I love to tell people when I speak is, men will get out of the shower, and I think you said that you have some teen boys,
I
so I
did.
think they do this too. But men get out of the shower and they're like puffing up and like looking, and you could almost see them like ruffling their feathers to get
Yep.
ready for the day, and then they go off, and they're tall, and they're a little, like, all right, I feel good. It doesn't matter what they look like. They're
Right.
feeling good about that, right? Well, women, what do? We get off in that moment, that short moment between taking down on our clothes, see there, and we start like poking things and sucking things and lifting things, or whatever, and really focusing on that. And what I like to challenge people to do is really emphasize the positive things about them, and and maybe it's a way you look, maybe it's even better the way you move, or something that your body was able to do that day or the day before. I mean, I don't need to tell you that the science supports how we can actually retrain our brain to be more positive.
Right.
And I think that focusing on those negative things, and not saying ignore them. I don't say ignore them, but I think focusing, retraining our brain to focus on those positive aspects of what we are able to do. I would much rather hear women say, "Gosh, I was able to lift the big thing of water from Costco." I would so much rather than be proud of that than, "Oh, I lost an inch on my hips," or whatever it is. But just kind of retraining our brain to focus on that, and I think honoring how God has changed you too. Your body may be different than it was when you were a child or a teen or before you had children, and I think that we do still need to honor that, because he has taken us through those steps, and we are there because he has allowed it. That doesn't make it less painful,
Right.
of course, but it's something that we can recognize, and at the same time make sure that we're guarding our heart and our thoughts.
Yeah. So good. Friends, we're going to take a real quick 1 minute commercial break, but stick with us to hear Amy share more about how to maintain a more grace filled perspective about our health. We'll be right back. Welcome back to your hope filled perspective. Amy, I think one of the struggles that we tend to wrestle with respect to our bodies and our health is that all or nothing mentality. How do we counter that with a healthier perspective?
I think one of the greatest things we can do is take changes that we're trying to make and make them very small.
Mm.
Whether it is the eating that we're trying to do, or the movement, or something like that. We talked earlier about the new year, and I see this. I mean, I've been in the fitness industry 15 years.
Yeah.
Every year, people make their New Year's resolutions, and maybe if they don't want to call them resolutions, they call them goals or new
Right.
habits or something, whatever, however you want to term it. You go all in, and probably drastically changing your food, drastically changing your movement, and your body's not ready for that. Your body's just not ready for that. And I know that it's not as exciting to talk about, but just make one change and do that for a week. Maybe you drink a lot of diet soda. Take that out for a week, and then keep that, and then add something else on. And it doesn't have all the glitter and the glory of doing some of these programs that are 30-day challenges, or something that your gym may be doing. I mean, it's just, and I understand that maybe there's not as much of a community feel, but it's more sustainable, and it's something that your body is going to adjust to better. Your mind is going to adjust to better, because I can tell you, when I have made big changes like that, and I have as recently as 2 years ago, when I was really trying to change up the food that we were eating for an anti-inflammatory.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that lasted about 3 days and I just I couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't do it. And I was pretty well versed on meal planning and cooking and all of that kind of stuff. It's hard, just as hard as our body, it is on our head as well, because then we feel like we have to maintain this certain level of adequacy, and we're not going to be able to do that. So I really think those small steps, recognizing the good that you're doing, and then moving forward is so much more sustainable. It's a lot more balanced, and it's something that your body and your mind will feel a lot better about doing.
Oh, I so agree because as you take one thing and then you experience some success, that will fuel your mood and your motivation to try the next thing. But like you said, when we take on everything, we're going to drastically change our diet and the way we move our bodies and all at one time, we are going to fail in at least one of those areas, and that can feel defeating. So I like your approach of starting small, start making that a habit, then incorporate a new one, get some success with that, then incorporate the new one, because emotionally that charges us up because we're feeling some success with what we're doing.
Yes.
What do you wish women knew when stepping into a fitness setting, either with a trainer or in a group fitness class? What do you want them to know?
I think there is a perception, and I recognize this is true some, that a lot of trainers and fitness instructors, number one, that they have it all together, and number two, that they expect you to have it all together.
Mm.
And I realize the line gets a little fuzzy when you're hiring someone to coach them and to or to coach you and to train you. But I can tell you, at least for me, I don't have it all together. And so I would never ever want anyone to create someone else as their standard.
Mhm.
And then the thing that is, I mean, I have a million of these, but any kind of progress I'm proud of. I always love to tell my clients, I want you to feel leaving equal parts fatigued, energized, and accomplished.
Ah.
So I want you to feel good about what you're doing, and I want you to feel a little tired. And then I want you to feel like, okay, I can do this and I can take the next step. And so communicate with your trainer. If they're blowing you out and you're not really comfortable with something, tell them, or your fitness instructor. If you walk into the gym and maybe you don't have a trainer and maybe you don't you're not comfortable going to group fitness classes, that's okay. Just get on, you can get on a treadmill, you can get on elliptical, you can ask someone. Oftentimes people love to share their knowledge. And so it really does not have to be perfect. It does not have to um, have all of these great steps. And I'm not saying this very well, but working with a trainer is for you, and it's to build you up, not only in your body and your muscles, but in your heart and your mind.
Mhm.
And work together with them, communicate with them if you're not loving what you're doing. And just know that we don't have it all together either, because I've been eating a little too many cookies lately, just for the record.
And that's why we can be friends. If you had it all together, I don't think we could be friends.
I've been cooking a lot with my kids and just trying to pass some time, and yeah, eating a lot.
What do you think is a barrier to women who are just trying to take care of themselves, but they don't really know what to do after that?
This is such a strong struggle for so many women. I um I have a survey that I do over on my website when someone joins my email list, or I used to, and it was like, tell me what describes you. And I had probably 10 things. This was the number one thing that people said. I'm just doing my best, but I look around and realize
Mhm.
it's never enough.
Yeah.
And I would like to remind women that maybe what you see is not enough, because that's not what God is asking you to do.
Oh.
Maybe he is wanting, you don't know everybody's situations. You don't know their family and life dynamics. A young mom with 3 littles under the age of 5, she's just not gonna be able to do what someone in her mid-40s with teenage kids can do.
Mm-hmm.
It's enough if you're putting mostly strong foods in your body that God gave us, and it's enough if you're moving it in the way that he gave you joy of moving. And what I mean by that is, like some people are like, I'm not running unless I am being chased by a bear. So don't run. That's okay. If you love moving, do Zumba. If you, I mean, like so that's where I won't get off on that tangent, but it's enough if you are listening to him and listening to how he wants you to be moving. And, if you're in line with God, I shouldn't say if, but, God kind of talks to us about these things. I
Mm-hmm.
think feeding your body the food with the foods he gave us is so very important. Obviously, cookies are not food he gave us, so I'm not perfect in that.
Please tell me
Excuse
he
me.
gave us chocolate.
Oh my gosh, double chocolate. Are you kidding me?
Don't burst my bubble on that one. Cookies,
No,
okay, but chocolate?
yeah. Double chocolate for sure.
So
Excuse me. Oh, go on.
I'm wondering, how do we counter the mindset that I should weigh a certain amount or I should look a certain way by a certain date? You mentioned earlier, sometimes there's those 30-day challenges, either online or in your gym or whatever. And I think sometimes, for me, just speaking for myself, but I think listeners will resonate, that I get in my mind, I want to weigh a certain amount or I want to fit into a certain outfit by a certain date. But I almost think that sets a trap for us. How do we deal with that?
I think taking it back to asking yourself, am I feeding my body with God's foods, and am I moving it in the way that he wants us to? And I will tell you, I get trapped in this all the time. I go in seasons where it's a little more challenging for me and where it's not, and feeling like I have to look a certain way. And I'll be really honest, being a fitness professional, there's a lot of pressure
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
to look a certain way. I most of the time when I meet new people and, you're kind of sitting there talking and it's like, "Oh, what do you do?" "I'm a personal trainer." And I get you probably can't see it on the
Yes.
video, but like it's like a quarter second. And I'm
Yep.
like, I know exactly what they're doing. I've seen it so many times. It's just looking me down and up and assessing me if she has the body good enough to be a fitness professional.
Sure.
So I get that. I feel that. And then particularly when we do these 30 days, I want to lose 10 pounds in 30 days. And my fitness pal says that I should be able to do that, so I can't do it. So what really takes me back to is, or what I try and do is, am I taking care of my body in the way that God wants me to? Because I do believe that that looks a little bit different for everybody as well. I mean, we have the basics, right? Like eat his foods, move your body. But there might be some different things, like, those with peanut allergies obviously can't eat peanuts. I love peanut butter and I eat that a lot. Celiac disease, there's a lot of things, right? Like they cannot be around gluten, but I don't think that gluten is the devil. I mean, Jesus broke bread with his disciples. So there's that. And then the other verse that I really cling to a lot is 2 Corinthians 10:5, when it's we demolish every argument and and I'm shortening it because my mind, I don't have that great a memory, but it's, we take captive every thought and
Yeah.
make it obedience to Christ. So
Yeah.
if we start thinking things of like, well, I should have done this, or would it be better if this, or I'd be more successful of this. Well, is that what Jesus is wanting of me? Is that how I am honoring him best? Um, and I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think really having that guiding light, and that for me, that is a strong verse, because my mind can go in a lot of really crazy places, but my heart really just has the one place of being at Christ's feet. And so if my mind is just doing all the things, my heart has got to say, hey, is that what Jesus says about you?
Right.
Probably not. Probably not. Or it might be conviction. it might be the Holy Spirit's conviction saying, "Yeah, Amy, clean it up a little bit. Don't eat so many cookies." And that's a fair thing,
Right.
right? But putting those expectations on ourselves, I think we wanna make sure that, they're done prayerfully
Mhm.
and recognizing h that it's important to take those back, take any negative thoughts captive and ask Jesus what he thinks about it.
So good. Friends, we're going to take a real quick 1 minute commercial break, but stick with us to hear Amy share her hope filled perspective. Welcome back to your hope filled perspective. Amy, what encouragement would you give women who feel like they're doing their best, but when they look around, they don't feel like they're enough?
I would say you are enough. You are enough. And you don't need to apply the standards that other people have for themselves on you. It's a process, it's a journey. I think most people will say, even those who are fitness professionals, they're going to tell you that, there are times that they don't think that they do a great job with it. And so don't use someone else's yardstick if that's not the yardstick that God has set for you, because that's really where that is. And you are enough, and you're worth it to keep moving, and you're worth it to put good foods in your body. And maybe it's hard to see several years down the road, or one of those, like what I call those macro callings, but the micro one, you're worth it to choose something that looks more like God's foods than something that came out of a vending machine, because that's going to set you up for that next, whatever that next step is that God wants you doing. So it's okay if you don't feel like you're enough, because you are enough in God's eyes.
And it makes me think of Jesus dying on the cross, because he didn't do that just for those who are physically fit or who eat perfectly. He died for all of us, whether we're short, tall, fat, thin, eating the keto diet, the paleo diet, the Atkins diet, the whole 30. His death was for us, regardless of what we do or what we look like. It was out of just love for who we are and whose we are. And I think that's, if we can get back to that and then take care of our bodies so that we can keep doing what he's called us to do here on earth. Jesus left to go back to heaven, but we're here as his ambassadors. And so if we'll take care of our body, we can do what he's called us to do, which is your whole mission behind Graced Health. If a listener is struggling with their self-esteem or their health and fitness goals, where they are right now, what hope-filled perspective would you want to offer them?
I think it's something that you can, now I'm sorry, I didn't do very well with that.
Okay.
I think your hope can come from something beyond you, and that something is someone, and that is Jesus. And I would say, start where you are. Start where you are. If you are used to watching Netflix for 8 hours a day, or whenever you get home from work until when you go to bed, well, maybe just get up for 30 minutes and walk your dog around the block.
Mhm.
And that's where you are. It doesn't have to be a certain way. It's really, really hard, especially with Instagram. And I love Instagram. I'm on there. But sometimes we can start following people for inspiration, and then we feel like we're not measuring up. And so I want to give women the hope that, and men too, that they can start where they are and make small, sustainable steps, and that will start to get them where they need to go. And in, I think it's in Psalms where it says, thy word is a lamp unto my feet.
Yeah.
That I someone gave me the visual one time that that's just like a little headlamp. And if and that lamp, or maybe like a lamp like they had back then, but it just goes it's like a little circle around your feet, and you can only see where that next step is as far as your headlamp goes out. It doesn't go out very far. So keep communicating with God. Keep asking him what he wants you to be doing next, but you only need to take the next step. You don't need to go run a marathon. You just need to take the next right step for you. And that may be right for you and not right for someone else, and that's okay. Rest in where God has you and what he's asking you to do.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective of how we can look at our health through the lens of grace. I think that's a novel perspective, but such a healthy one. Listeners, I want to leave you with 1 Timothy 4, verses 3 through 5, that says, "They forbid people to marry and order them to abstain from certain foods, which God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. For everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving, because it's consecrated by the word of God and prayer." God has given us foods to energize and maintain our bodies and our health. Where we need to really shift our perspective is to get back to doing what God's called us to do the way he's called us to do it, and to always be thankful for his provision. I hope this conversation that we have had with Amy about a more graceful, healthy perspective has given you some food for thought and help to maintain your own hope in your healthy endeavors. As always, this has been your hope-filled perspective. Until next week, make it a hope-filled week.